screams in the night. Indian legends. Miles of footprints. Sightings. What are these elusive hominids that stalk the wilderness? Join us for eyewitness accounts, questions and answers, Bigfoot encounters of the past, and ongoing encounters in the present. Your host, two-time witness, field researcher for 43 years, William Jevning. Welcome to the mystery. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. Brian and I have Steve with us tonight. Steve, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm doing a lot better than I was 3 weeks ago, you might say.
Now you had an actual sighting. This was the first actual sighting you had, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
and,
well just jump right in and tell us what happened.
Okay, I was getting ready to go over to see my daughter, and it was on Saturday, the 23rd of March, and I pulled out of my driveway, and she lives about 40 miles east of me. And I pulled out the driveway, and there was this Ford pickup, the same make and model as mine, except it was a kind of a maroon color. And I'd wait for him, and as soon as I pull out of my drive, I got a hill going up east while they was doing probably 35, 40. So I finally get going down. I go down the road a half mile, and I got to stop. There's an intersection there, and he's heading straight east the same way I am. And as soon as I cross the road, well, to the south of the road is the creek that runs behind my house. It runs down there. And it's all timber on the south side, and then there's a farmhouse on the north side of the road with a barn. And then you go a little ways, and there's probably about a 30-acre wheat field in there on the north side of the road. And I get up there by the wheat field, and I look out there, and there's 3 domesticated geese. They're the gray ones with the big orange top notch and stuff. And they was there, and I told myself, wow, it's amazing they're still alive with the foxes and the coyotes. Well, anyway, this Ford pickup, it's still ahead of me, and he's coming up on this bridge and a hill. And I'm kind of looking out in the wheat field to the north, and all of a sudden he hits his brakes. And the next moment, it's a moment that I will never forget. It's what I seen come out on the south side of that truck. It basically, to put it brief and blunt, it looked like an orangutan with a human's head. It had a gray head on it, kind of a charcoal gray head. I didn't notice the neck. I noticed the back was about 5 foot long, and I mean, it was straight. And had such a low profile. I measured the bumper on my truck, which was 26 inches high. And this was probably lower than that. But it traveled, I went back up later, and I measured, there was a fence 25 feet to where I approximately seen it come out from in front of that truck. But my view of vision, I'm going to say, was probably, 35, 40 feet that I could see clear. And that thing traveled that distance in a second or less. I mean, as it went, I'm going to say it went flying by. But it had long hair on it. The sun was shining, and you could see the red hair, and then with the brown. But I'm going to say it was about 3 to 4 inches long. And then on the side, clear down to the ground, you could see the long hair and the arms and back of the arms and stuff, and their shoulders back. I mean, it had long hair. And the legs or arms were never extended past the shoulders. They was down to its side. And I've never seen anything move as fast and quick with a low profile. And basically, it scared the hell out of me. The minute it came out, I knew what it was. But it took me 2.5 weeks to accept the fact of what I saw. But in the meantime, it disappeared. And by this time, I'm up on the bridge, and these guys are slowed down and are going up a hill, and the county had just dumped some 3 and 2-inch crushed rock. They're in a half-ton pickup, and you don't want to stop on those hills with a fresh crushed rock. But these guys were slowing down, and I started chuckling to myself, and I seen what I seen, and I can't believe that I seen it. And I can't imagine what's going through these guys' heads. I know they're confused. Well, anyway, they get right to the top of that hill, and they slow down again. I said, man, these guys are wanting to go back. Well, then we're going to go down a dip and go up another hill. And I get up there behind them. I'm starting to back off, and they went about, maybe 100 yards, and they just stopped in the road. And I'm starting to chuckle to myself because they know that, they don't know what they've seen. I honestly believe it. Well, anyway, they pulled in this drive and pulled up there about 100 feet and just parked. And I'd text my daughter and said, well, I'll be over there in such time. And I got there and I says, do I go back and check with them or keep going? And I said, well, if they back out on the road, I'm going to go ahead and I'll turn around and go back. Well, they never did. And I went over and I came back to there that night about 12 o'clock. I was coming down the hill when I got to the bridge, and I slowed down, and I could see where somebody had turned around right on the west side of the bridge, exactly where that, I seem to think it was a juvenile Bigfoot where he had crossed. It was the exact same spot, but you could see where they turned around. It's a very dangerous spot to be turning around, especially on these roads. At the base of the hill, and nobody does 35. They're doing 50 or 55 most of the time. So I knew they'd come back because they couldn't believe what they'd seen, or they didn't understand what they'd seen. I knew what I'd seen, and it just took me so long to accept the fact that Bigfoot is alive and well in Kansas. There's no, it just, everybody wants a sighting like that, but it's what it does to you. It's the fear that it puts in you.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain. I want to go mushroom hunting. Well, I'm going to go mushroom hunting here in about 2 weeks. I think they'll be popping. And I was telling people in town about it. And the way I got my point across, I says, I'm going back there, and I says, I'm going to take a bag to put my mushrooms in. I says, I got to have my walking stick. And I said, I'm going to throw an apple in there and a bottle of Grey Poupon. And they get there and they say, what's the Grey Poupon for? I says, what people don't realize is if you're on their menu, I don't care how much heat you're carrying, what kind of firearm you got. If you do not have time to respond, you're going to be their dinner. And I figured, hey, he can have mushrooms, he can have Grey Poupon on his steak, and an apple for dessert. It's that. And people don't realize the speed, these things, the speed and the distance that they can travel. And the low profile they travel at. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Let me ask you about that, Steve. And it was on all fours, correct?
Yeah, it was on all fours.
Now, being a primate, and we see how, gorillas and chimps and other primates move, and it's a little foreign to us because it's difficult for us to move like that, but can you describe how the arms and the legs were functioning as it moved like that? Or did you see it enough?
Well, I didn't see it. The only thing I can tell you is the front arms were on the downward and towards the back position. It's as if it was, I want to call it a Bigfoot spider jump or Bigfoot spider leapfrog jump.
Did it move anything like a chimp or gorilla would?
I didn't. I just seen it flying out. I didn't see no leg or arm movement. I mean, it was just, some people would get there and say, well, it jumped into a porthole. Well, I don't buy that.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't transform into anything. It was just traveling at such a high rate of speed. And the thing that blows me away is 25 feet from where I seen it was a 4-stranded barbed wire fence. And I didn't know the fence was there at the time. And I went back that Sunday and I checked for tracks and I checked for hair on the fence. And I can't explain where it went. I mean, it just poof. I can understand.
Brushy. I'm sorry, it's fairly brushy around there, right?
Yeah, it is. At I don't know, I'd say about 35 feet it was brush. But I had there's 25 feet to the front fence that was all grass. And I had a good view of that. But it's just that I was so shocked at the speed that it traveled at. And don't think for a minute I didn't try for a week or two to try to turn it into a cougar.
Yeah. Well, reddish brown hair is not really a cougar, so.
No, and it's 4 inches long. I mean, and the head, a charcoal gray head, and it was round. It looked, as our heads are rounded on top, comes across the forehead. That's exactly the way this was. There was no protruding nose, and I didn't see no ears.
Okay.
And that's what freaked me out. It's like I said, in a orangutan with a human head. But, it didn't... that's the best way I could describe it, I guess. But, it was the length of it. And I estimated its weight at about 200 pounds, but I didn't get a depth, and I'm sure it went more than that. But
right,
and somebody else.
I was just going to say, I have a witness up north here a few years back was sitting near a pasture, and I can't remember what he was doing up there at the time, but he said that he saw one of these things, and it was actually on 2 legs. And it took off running from the edge of the road. He actually marked the spot and timed it as it ran across this field. And he was able to calculate the measurement in conjunction with the time period it took from the starting point where he saw it at the edge of the road before it hit. There was another road, I can't remember how far it was, on the other side of this large field. And he said the calculation came out around 45 miles an hour.
Well, I believe that because I've never seen. I've had 3 encounters with cougars, and all 3 times they ran. And that one time, that one was spooked, and I know what they can do from a standstill and jump. They can move. But one thing with the cougar. You always see their tail, and this didn't have a tail. There was no tail on it, but I don't know. And this is 3/4 of a mile away from my home, and that's what's spooky. But here, that goes back to several years ago when I found that pile of scamp behind the house.
Right.
And that's starting to make sense. And then in January, there was 3 nights here. And they was about a week apart, but I would get this strong odor of a sulfur septic smell that would drift through the house, and it would disappear. Well, then February, the neighbor, he's got Black Angus, Red Angus, and he runs a cow-calf operation. But it was in February, about 7, 8 o'clock at night, I was sitting here, and I don't watch TV or have the radio on. I'm spending too much time with my phone on YouTube, but, I can hear everything that goes on outside, and that cow started to bellow. And it went on for about 3 minutes, and I swear to God, something was trying to break his neck. Well, I talked to him. He said, no, he said, I ain't missing any cows. Well, then I found out today that he was feeding grain to his cows. He winters them here. And then that field that I seen, that wheat field that night when I came back, I did see about, I counted 7 deer, and that's just what I got in my headlights. I didn't shine the field, but, they got a good feed source. Plus, just east of that bridge is the power line that runs from the southeast to the northwest in the creek. And I don't know. I know they pass through here. There's no doubt about it. But I gotta find some solid evidence. I was talking to a neighbor that lives directly a half mile south of where I had that sighting out. And we got talking, and she was telling me about the cougars that have been seen out around here. And they said, out here at night, she said, when the lights go out, she said, the noises we hear outside, she says, we're getting us a mastiff. We're getting us a dog to protect us. And she's, she was a nurse practitioner. She was my nurse practitioner for years, and she had 2 strokes, and she's in a wheelchair, but her husband's there, and, but they're scared enough to get a mastiff, and that's a pretty big dog, but it's a very protective dog.
Yeah, we had a mastiff.
And, but I'm going to, she said, I got a date with you. She says, I want some morel mushrooms. And if I get any, the first batch I get's going to her, but I want to pick her brain and find out what kind of noises they're hearing up there at night. She mentioned the owls, but I want to know more because...
Would be interesting to know.
It would be, but I know we had... you've helped me out a lot. But I did go out. I did get me a dog Thursday. My daughter took me to the pound, and I found a yellow lab, and I've had him for 2 days, but he seems to be protective. And my neighbor got there, and he said, well, that ain't a guard dog. And I said, well, I have a feeling that if we're down back and we're mushroom hunting, I says, I feel I have a chance. The dog
would do the job.
There's a big... Yeah, the dog is going to respond.
Sure.
They're going to bark, or if it tucks its tail between the legs and heads for the house, I better be right behind it. But at least I'll have a warning, and I feel safer.
Yeah, a dog is great early warning with these things, so... Brian, did you have anything you wanted to bring up, or?
I was going to ask Steve if the creature looked at you or acknowledged you as it crossed, or did it just cross real fast without looking up?
It just crossed. It happened so fast. Its head was straight down, and I think it was just looking straight ahead. It happened so fast, but
And did you tell your daughter? Did you tell your daughter when they got there?
Yeah, I did. An amazing thing is they just moved out to where they're at in the country, and they're living in this cabin on a creek, and you got to walk across the 4-foot bridge to get to the cabin. But on the east side of them, they got a high-pressure gas line that comes through there. And in my research, there has been a white Bigfoot spotted in that area. And I told them my daughter's I got 2 grandkids, actually 3 grandkids. She just had a baby. But I says, you and your kids will see a Bigfoot before I'll ever have another encounter. I said, you're in the prime area. I said, they're going to travel the gas lines. And I said, you got the kids here. And I said, they're attracted to kids. So I said, don't be surprised. Well, her husband was out. They just moved in there, and they was building the chicken coop. And he took me down to a greenhouse, and we was going down the highway, and he says, you know, Steve, he says, I don't get scared. He said, I ain't scared of nothing. But he said the other night I was out there, and he said I had my floodlight, and I was busy working. And he said this fear came over me, and he said, I got scared and went in the house. I says, well, I've had that feeling before, but I don't think it was a cat and or a coyote or anything. There's something about a Bigfoot that if you get in the vicinity of them and they're watching you, you're going to have that sixth sense kick in. You're going to get that fear. And I don't know. It's like I said, they'll have an encounter before I will, I think. I don't care I wasn't looking for one, and I refuse to go out and look for one. I'm going to go out. I'm not going to let them run me out of the woods. I'm going back here, and I'm going mushroom hunting. I'm going to take Gibson with me. He's a 6-year-old lab, and I'm going to take him with me, and, maybe he'll sniff out mushrooms for me. I'll try. He's pretty smart, but, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to walk the creek. I'm going to be a lot more aware of my surroundings, and I'll be looking for tracks and stuff. And it's the lake that I fish at. I'm going to take him, and I know there's been a sighting out there. And, wherever I go, he's going to be with me. But I'm going to just do my normal things. And because when you go out looking for them, you're never going to find them. They're going to show up when you least expect it. And because that day I seen that one, Bigfoot wasn't even on my mind. 2:30 in the afternoon, and to be honest about it, I don't know where he came from, because on the north side of the road, there's a guardrail. I didn't see him jump up over the guardrail, and they just burnt the grass on both sides of the creek there. And if there would have been any footprints, they should have shown up in the grass, but I didn't. But I didn't do a very thorough investigation, because back here you pull off on the road and start snooping around, if somebody don't call the law on you, somebody's going to stop. Well, what are you doing here? Well, I seen a Bigfoot cross here, and then all the fun starts. But I don't know. I know they're here. I did get a photo from a friend south of me about 20 miles. He took it in December, and it shows 4 of them in it. You can see 3 pretty clearly in it. To me, it's pretty convincing. And I have shown it. A lot of people, they don't know how to respond to it, and some of them get there. I showed a bet where I got my dog at. Says, well, that could be a dog. I can get this dog to stand up like that. And is some of the things the comments you hear. One guy just says, well, that's a pile of rocks. And it's pretty obvious what it is. But, some are just, and I can't really say too much because it took me so long to accept the fact of what I seen. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. And I wouldn't, to be honest about it, I wouldn't wish a sighting on anyone. I know a lot of people want to see them, but until you do, it's the effect it has on you. I mean, it puts a fear in you that I did walk back. Last Sunday, I did walk back to a quarter of a mile back behind the house to the creek, and I found myself talking to myself part way back, and I said, oh, that's a good thing. And then I got back there, and I seen a cow and several calves, and I observed them, and they was perfectly calm. So I felt pretty good, but and I felt better after the walk. But there's still that fear that I know I'm out here, and I know I'm not alone. And these don't appear to be very aggressive, but turkey season's coming up, and somebody shoots one with a 12 gauge, and I'm out here mushroom hunting. They may not be in the best of moods.
This is true.
And you don't know. You don't know what's happened to them, and I think they're very unpredictable. And I don't think they can be trusted. I don't think they. I don't know. And I could see, the neighbor over here. I did find out today he is feeding grain. Well, what's to say that? I mean, they come. I got that little creek that runs right behind my house. They could be down there, and they just, if the cows, I mean, he would always feed in the dark, and where he feeds at is pretty much in the dark. He's got a mercury vapor light on his barn up there, his shed, and I got one in my yard. But I mean, if he's feeding in a trough, if they come up there on all fours, you're never going to see it. You're never going to see the prints because they're going to blend right in, and they could go in there, and I mean, they could get the grain.
Sure.
And it ain't going to take them very long, But
well, very interesting, Steve.
It is, and like I said, I'm going to. I'm not going to give up looking for. I'm still going to be out, and I'll. It's getting interesting back here.
Well, certainly keep me posted as to what's going on there.
Well, I intend to. But I feel a lot safer now that I got old Gibson, and he's a good dog. I mean, he's
definitely a big help.
Cats don't. Well, it is, and the cats don't like him because he seems to think that the yard is his domain, and the cats, I feed him on the patio, and he comes out the door, and if one runs, it chases on, but they both get their exercise in. But no, I feel so much better that he's around, that,
Well, that's good.
At least you can, yeah.
Well, listen, Steve, we certainly appreciate having you on and getting the update of what's going on there.
Yeah, but I assure you, Bigfoot's alive and well in Kansas. No doubt about it. Even you may have called me one of those skeptics on standing on top of the fence, and 3 weeks ago I got pushed off or got knocked off.
That's the way it happens.
I wanted to believe these people and everything, but until I actually, wow. Like I said, I wouldn't wish a sighting on anyone because it's something that's not going to go away. And it still bothers me. I mean, and it probably will for a while. But just knowing that there's an apex predator out there that, I don't know, I mean, if a dog's scared of it, you better watch out, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's crazy. Well, hey, thank you. I appreciate it. And my advice for anybody out there going out there mushroom hunting or out walking is take a dog. And I'm not against carrying a firearm, but at least take a dog, because they're going to give you, they'll buy you some time. And
absolutely, and give you that heads up that something's around.
They will. They'll give you that heads up. And at least you can get prepared, because if you don't have that heads up, you don't have, I mean, the rate of speed that they travel is frightening.
Exactly.
And this was on all fours, and at the low profile, it's scary. So.
Absolutely. Well, listen, keep your eyes open, and I'm sure you're going to find out things from people in the area if you do some talking around.
Well, I do. I I heard from the guy that's east of me that had some of those crazy stories, and he hasn't seen anything yet. But I'm going to catch him one of these days in town, and I've got the one photo, and I'm going to say, well, is this what they look like? And I'm going to get his story. I'm going to feel him out, but I want to talk to him. The guy definitely seen something. And one other thing I want to mention is that, you know, he caught him in the pond fishing. Well, that's not uncommon, because back here, the people hand fish, and those catfish will make those holes up underneath the bank. I got one friend that caught a 70-pound flathead by hand.
Wow.
And, you know, if a human can do it, you know, a Bigfoot can do it, and they're well aware of it. And, you know, and all they got to do is go around these farms and get along the edges and peel back in those holes, and they got their fish. So, you know, and there's a ton of ponds back here that's stocked with fish. So, I mean, they've got it's just scary. I don't know.
All right, Steve, well, listen. Oh, go ahead, man.
No, I could accept them being out in Washington State, but back here in Kansas.
Oh, yeah, it's an area you wouldn't think, but there they are.
But you know that I talked to a Native American elder, and he said they've been here forever. He said they was here before we was here.
Correct.
He said they've always been here. So, you know, I would just like to learn more about them, how they survive and what they do. I mean, there's so much to be learned about them, but they're so elusive and fast and quick that, you know, I don't know. But I think more people need to be educated about them. They are out there. So.
Absolutely.
And I do my part. I talked to that one kid, and I told him my story, and he's kind of scratching his head. And I turned around and I said, well, if I haven't convinced you I'm crazy, I guess I didn't do my job, did I? He kind of smiled. But sometimes I mean, I got a good sense of humor. My daughters get a little upset when, Dad, you talk too much. Well, I just tell them the truth. And if they don't want to accept it, you know, I don't care. But as long as I can plant a seed or get the message out, I know what I've seen, and it was scary.
Well, listen, we certainly appreciate you telling us.
But like I said, I mean, just be careful and always be aware of your surroundings.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Yep.
Well, I'm going to, I know you got another interview to go, and I'll go ahead and let you go, and we will talk to you later, and I'll keep you updated on any new sightings or information I get on back here, and we'll talk to you later.
Absolutely. I'm very interested in what's going on there, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Okay, you bet. Okay, good night.
Well, Roy, you've had 4 encounters. I'm just going to let you tell us, from kind of the beginning, how did all this unfold?
Well, I've had 4 visual encounters, and at least one, where the thing was just screaming down the hollow. But the first one started when I was probably 8 or 10. And this was back in the 70s. Remember when all the cattle mutilations were going on, and there's a bunch of weird stuff going on? Yeah, we lived right in the heart of all of that. And lots of weird stuff and UFOs and everything were going on. And one night, I was just laying in bed. My parents owned a trailer park, of course, usually a trailer park, outside of town. And I just heard this breathing, heavy breathing, and it was as heavy in as it was out. And, I laid there, and it's just right outside my window. And when I didn't hear it anymore, I looked up, and we were at the very back of the park, and this thing hopped a 6-foot fence, no effort. And it was just walking in the field away from our house, just casual. I don't know. It was the weirdest thing, just stood outside my window and was breathing and then walked away. That was the first one. And then the second one was when was the summer of 81. It was August. And me and my wife now, but she was my girlfriend back then, and my best friend were up at Holter Lake. And we were all the way in the back of the lake. And during the day, I'd hear branches breaking, and then all of a sudden, something ran just out of sight in the tree line. Thud. I mean, I could feel it as much as I could hear it. It was like a Jurassic Park thing. Thud, thud, splash. And I was like, okay, that's odd. But anyway, just kept going on all afternoon. So about 11 or midnight, somewhere in that, we didn't have a tent. We were just laying under the stars with blankets, and the fire was just burning down. And I heard a branch snap. That's the only reason I knew that thing was there. And I tipped my head back, and no exaggeration, this thing was about 12 inches away from me, this big male, just standing, looking over top of me. And the thing that really spooked me was how something that big, because, they're not just tall, the girth and everything, it was just enormous. But I didn't hear anything, I didn't smell anything, I didn't sense anything. And if I wouldn't have heard that branch, man, I wouldn't even known it was there. And it just stood there looking at me, and I looked at it for a minute. It's probably only a few seconds, really. And I yelled and threw the blankets up in the air, and it spooked it, and it ran off. And I said, man, I'm not sleeping here tonight. So we got in the car. We drove about 5 miles down the road, spent the night, came back in the morning, and you could see there's this elk grass. That's what we call it. It's about waist high. We had been messing around with stuff all day. But you could see the imprints of where this thing had ran off, and it had totally crushed the grass. It was so heavy. Let's see. And then, I forgot to tell you, when I was about 12 years old, we were living in a different part of town. And so this was still in the 70s. This was by the airport. This is where a lot of the weird UFO stuff was going on. It was broad daylight. And I'm guessing 150, maybe 200 yards away. I don't even know how we noticed it. Broad daylight, about 4 in the afternoon, right out in the field. This thing was standing there at a wood pile. And it was just twisting all of these logs. And throwing them around. So I had a kid's telescope, right? And we got that out and was looking at it. We watched the thing for about 15, 20 minutes. And me and my cousin and my sister did. And it was just bizarre. Let's see. Then the last one was actually last September. We moved to Helena here back in '93. And up here in Marysville, we noticed these tree breaks. So I pulled the camper up there. And my son was there, and he was breaking firewood for me. And just snapping it and breaking it, and he decided to leave. So anyway, he left, and I thought, well, it's time to go to bed. So I got the two dogs. We got in the camper, and my son's lab just would not calm down. He just kept pacing back and forth, back and forth. And I was like, man, I'm just not going to get any sleep here. So what I did was I started loading up the car, and about 30 feet in the wood line, I heard this 800-pound owl. It was whoo, whoo. I mean, it was so loud. I mean, you knew it wasn't an owl. You know, I mean, it sounded good, but it was so loud. It was just unbelievable. So that was a Friday. The next Saturday, he came up. I left, of course, and then he came up with his girlfriend and her son, and we were just kind of camped there all day. And about 5:30 in the evening, he did this wood knock. I don't know if it was a joke, but he really whacked this tree, and did it 3 times. And I look up the hill, and there's this chocolate brown Sasquatch just standing there looking at me. And I'm looking at it, and we just stared at each other. And the thing that really, I don't know, it's like my eyes were drawn to its pecs, because they were each about 2 feet wide, you know, and I could see the nipples underneath it. And he had such a little head for how big his body was. The next day, we left that night, of course, then. You know, she's like, oh, I think we ought to stay here because obviously they're friendly, you know, if they're coming out and just looking. I said, yeah, till they decide to come down at 3 in the morning, and your son has to go for therapy for the rest of his life. And so we left. The next night, I go up there by myself. About 11 o'clock, I hear this little kid, it sounds like a 2 or 3-year-old, crying on the same hill. And that really creeped me out. So I left, came back the next day, and then I heard these same thing about 11 o'clock at night. There were these whistles, and then I heard a few minutes later like this monkey chatter, and then I heard I don't know, it was just like this. It was a voice saying something. I couldn't understand it. And then I just packed up and just left and haven't been back there, you know. So, but what was bizarre after that, probably about 2 days, I was sitting out in the garage, and it was about 10 o'clock at night, and the dogs would not get off the porch. They just kept barking and barking and barking. And they would not get off the porch. And it's like, what is going on with you? Even the puppies wouldn't get off the porch. And a rock was slung up against the garage. And I don't know. I mean, the campsite's about 10 miles away. I don't know how they could follow you back to your house, but I don't know. But it was just bizarre. So those are my basic encounters.
Hey, Roy, with all the sightings that you had, how similar or how different did each of them look compared to one another?
Oh, the one I saw through the telescope looked totally different than the one that was standing over me and the chocolate brown one. The chocolate brown one looked more like Patty, and the one that was standing over me, real big-bodied. The one that was twisting, we went down there after that left. We went down there a couple of hours later, and we saw these 3-inch logs just twisted and hair, but that one looked like it was tall and thin. It wasn't real muscled. It was coal black, and it had a face like the Them and Us. It looked like a monster. And it just, the anger, it was just angry about something. You could tell. I mean, he was just throwing these logs around and breaking them and twisting them. And, you know, the one I saw in September, he was a lot taller. That one, I had my son go up there, and that one was about 70 yards away, and he was 3 of my son wide and probably about 9 feet. And he was real big, heavy-bodied, man. I'm guessing 800, 1,000 pounds. But the one I saw through the telescope was a lot thinner and not near as tall. And his face was totally different. So they just looked way different than the other 2 that I'd seen, you know. So.
Yeah, and most of these sightings were during the day, you said?
Yeah, yeah, they were. Well, 2 of them were during the daylight. The one with the telescope and the one up here at Marysville, that was during broad daylight. The one when I was camping was at night, and then the one that was breathing outside my window was at night.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a moonlit night, man. I could see that thing walking away perfectly, and that was real big bodied too. You know, just strolling away like he didn't have a care in the world. You know, there's usually, what weirded me out too is, like, after that camping experience, man, I didn't go into the woods for 20 years because I just couldn't sleep at night, you know. I bring a couple guns, one under my head, a couple by my side, and I just couldn't do it. And started finally going back, and then this last September that happened again. So I don't know. I've really grown to hate these things, man, with a passion, with a real passion. So, but they look totally different. That one that we saw throwing logs, and the other ones I've seen. The other ones were big, muscle, real muscle, tall, big. This thing was tall. I'm guessing not near as tall, probably 6.5 to 7 feet, but it was thin. More of an athletic build, like a basketball player or something like that. And just its face was so messed up, man. It was like I said, it looked like Them and Us, you know. And I'll never forget just how the eyes looked. So you could just tell it was mad, just angry about something. I don't know what it was.
Now, the other ones, you said they were more like the Patterson Sasquatch. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were real big, real muscled. And what was bizarre, like, when that one I was sitting there looking at the one I saw up at Marysville. I'm staring at it. We're staring at each other. I look at his girlfriend, look back, and it was running up the hill. I mean, it moved so fast. It's almost unbelievable how fast they move. And I turned back to her, and she goes, "Did you see that?" And she just caught a glimpse of it as it was running up the hill. I was the only one that saw it, that we just stared at each other. It had gray skin. It was like black skin with kind of charcoal gray swirled in. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. You know, we just talked to another witness who had a very, very similar description, both with the charcoal, if you recall that, Brian, kind of the charcoaly color in its face, and in the high-speed movement.
Right.
Yeah, and it moved so amazingly fast for how big it was. And its face looked so different. It doesn't look like anything I've really seen online. It just, or what I saw before. It just, I guess I would say it had more of a, like I said, he had a really tiny head for how big his body was. Mm-hmm. I mean, his delts were huge chest, huge traps, and he didn't move until I turned to look at Candace. and then looked back, and I just caught a little bit running up the hill. I couldn't believe he covered that distance that fast. And so my son went up there this winter with his girlfriend, and, could hear it walking around I think they lived there all year round, up on the hill there. So, and we kind of, last year, he was at Georgetown Lake, and my son's not very big. I mean, he's about 5'8", 5'9", but he's real kind of thinly built. He was snowmobiling with his buddies. I'll have to have him tell you about it. But anyway, he saw this huge black one, and what he figured out, it was keeping his attention. Whenever he would start to leave or it would move a little bit, and it was keeping his attention while a couple of others were working their way around behind him. And I was like, "Why didn't you leave?" He goes, "I don't know." And what happened? Well, my buddies drove up, and then we left. And he and all of his friends are like over 6 foot and stuff, so he's the smallest guy of the bunch. And that was a spooky deal too. I don't know. I think there's he did, didn't he? I'm glad his friends drove up, but I think there's a lot more of these things than people know.
Oh yeah.
And when I was up at Marysville, I mean, I'm not more than a quarter or a half a mile out of town from Marysville, and that's where they just, like I said, the tree breaks are on one side of the road pointing towards this hill.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, and from Helena, it's only about 10 miles. As the crow flies, it's not even that far, maybe 5 or 6. But I don't know. That's what makes me think there's a lot more of them than people think. And
there actually is.
Usually, yeah. And I don't know. Do you think there's more of them? Do you think their population's growing, or?
It is. And one of the things we're seeing, and I've mentioned this before, we're seeing a lot of juveniles. I'm getting a lot of juvenile reports this year, and that's a telling indicator that the population is increasing dramatically.
Okay. Well, I don't know. It's, and usually, I don't know, when they're around, you just get this gut-wrenching feeling. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that sense of dread.
Oh,
and the one that, when we were camping that time, I didn't get that at all. And the other times, usually you get this sinking, horrible feeling in your stomach. And I don't know, that's why I think there's something spiritual about them, in my opinion. Can't put my finger on it, but there's something there. I don't know, and I don't know if I've just been lucky to run into this amount of them, or unfortunate, or what the deal is, or just happen to be in the right place at the right time, but I don't know. So, and I know up at Remini too, there's tree breaks up there, and my son was snowmobiling up there, and saw footprints going up the side of a mountain, took a picture of them, and they were in a straight line, not
mm-hmm.
like people walk.
Right.
And so I think there's a clan up there too, and you get just a really odd feeling when you go up there too. What was funny was my kind of a funny story. My brother-in-law, I was raised. My uncle had an encounter when I was real young, and the neighbor called the sheriffs. He was riding his bike on Upper River Road in Great Falls, and one stepped out from the bushes and was facing him. And he just panicked and kept coasting towards it. And thank God a car came around the corner, and when the headlights hit it, it bolted. So anyway, the sheriffs came, and they did, back then they did like ESP tests and stuff, because of all the weird stuff that was going on. But so anyway, I knew these things were around ever since I was little. It's not like when I grew up, everybody just poo-pooed it. But, it was just, like I said, I don't know, but it seems like I don't know. And what weirded me out, too, was that rock hitting the garage door. I know it was a rock thrown up against it at like 10 or 11 at night.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, have you ever heard of them doing something bizarre like that? Like following, I don't know how they could follow a person to their house, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's actually more frequent than you think.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I just don't, because you're driving, I just don't know how they would do that. That's what I mean. Something weird's going on there. I don't know how they could do that. But
it might not even be following. They may have already been around your home.
Oh. Well, that could be. I don't know. I mean, we did have one night, I'll tell you what, we had 15 chickens that ended up missing, and the only thing we found was one tiny little handful of feathers. That was it, out of all 15. I mean, if it would have been coyotes or skunks or anything like that, and we had a door. Yeah, exactly. You would have seen feathers all over the place. But they were just gone with one little handful of feathers there. And I told my wife, I said, man, I wonder if it was a Sasquatch. And she said, well, I don't have any better explanation. That's just too weird. And that happened to us twice. Thank God they haven't messed with our goats or anything, but I don't know. I mean, after that, I bought a 50 BMG and some good night vision, so figure if they show up.
At least you're
prepared. I don't want to go to war with these. Yeah, I don't want to go to war with these things, but because I know how awful that can get. But if it has to, I want to be on the winning side. So I bought those white phosphorus night vision, and I've got some infrared, and so I don't know. But just seems like things are, I don't know if they're ramping up or what the deal is. You said the populations are growing, you think, too.
Yeah.
So that's probably the explanation for it. There's just getting a lot more of them.
Well, keep in touch with me and let me know what's going on. If it does ramp up, I can help you.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Do you have any idea what the purpose would be of coming and throwing a rock? I was the only one in the garage, too. That was kind of weird.
Could be testing boundaries.
Okay. That could be. I don't know. So if anything else happens, yeah, I'll definitely let you know. We were going to go back up there when it warms up a little bit and, just go up, bring the night vision and the infrared up there and just go up there at night. I don't know. I'm kind of apprehensive of doing it, though, because I don't want them to follow me back, but it kind of feels like they already know where I live.
Right.
And like I said, the chickens, I don't know what else it could be. And like I said, just one little handful of feathers for 15 chickens. And we had a door on the thing, too.
Mm-hmm.
So these things can open doors. I know that for sure. I heard your podcast about the guy who, poor guy that got really worked over by one that was in his house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously they know how to let themselves in,
Well, they certainly try anyway, and sometimes they're lucky.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like if they pick out somebody, it's kind of like a bully. They start picking on them for some reason.
They can be, and they can be very vindictive and be angry for very trivial reasons.
Oh, really?
At least trivial to us.
Yeah, just something you don't even think of, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it could be usually some kind of food or territorial issue.
Right, I was just saying, just being on their land, what they perceived as their land could be enough to set them off.
Okay. Well, that could be too. I don't know. There's, you know what? I will, I'll email you my son's number, and he can tell you the story when he saw that one at Georgetown Lake, and,
Okay.
And because I told him you were calling tonight, and he's like, well, I'd like to talk to him about that. And I mean, I heard one other story about a guy who did that, who it would just move enough to keep the guy following him. And then he heard something around to the side, and he knew that he was being, and that's what I guess he didn't, he's Roy Jr., but we call him Boo. he didn't, I guess he didn't hear that story. And whenever he'd start to get on his snowmobile, the thing would move a little bit or step out, and look at him. So then he'd stop and look at it. Like I said, he thinks there were a couple more working their way around behind him.
I was just going to say I'd be concerned about where the others were.
Yeah, because they're never alone hardly ever, are they?
That's true.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to go to war with them, but if I have to, I have to. And yeah, if they start showing up here, I'll definitely get back in touch with you, see what I can do.
I'll go ahead and send you some measures I'll send you some measures to employ, so you're kind of have information at hand, if anything happens.
Okay. Yeah, because they're just not that far over the hill. And like I said, he was up there about a month or so ago, and he could hear one walking on the top of the ridge. And so I think they live up there all year round. And man, it just boggles my mind how close it is to town. And most people, it almost weirds you out, doesn't it? How many people go for hikes and whatever and don't know what to look for? They have no idea that these things are probably staring them down or whatever.
Could very well
no
be.
idea. Yeah.
And close to town, I've talked about this before. We're kind of sloppy as a species anymore. We leave lots of things around that are easy food sources, and I suspect that's why they're close to towns.
That's true. Yeah, I was amazed. You said that you thought that they had to have about 15,000 calories a day
minimum. It's not what I think. It's what I was told.
Really? Oh, did Mr. Black tell you that?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's an enormous amount of calories. That's. Oh, you know what? My son just walked in. If you don't mind, I'll have him tell you that story about Georgetown Lake real quick.
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. This is Brian's with me here.
Hey. Hi.
So Roy was telling us you had an encounter to tell us about.
Yeah. So it was last year. I ended up buying a new snowmobile, and we went up. It's called Georgetown Lake, and then we rode about 40 miles into the backcountry, and I mean, it is really remote. And I think it was March 8th. Yeah, it was in March, and we went up this mountain, and then it kind of flattened up towards the top about halfway up, and then it started climbing again. Well, we climbed up through these trees and got onto the first flat part, and we're playing around in the trees. Well, I ended up getting lost from my buddies. There was 3 of them. And so I pulled up to the only way out of there and shut my sled off so I could wait for them. And that's a real important thing with snowmobiling, is never to be, always have 2 people in case something happens. Well, I got looking around, and I noticed there was it looked like a real black tree at first. And all the timber's real green, and I mean, it was black. And so I got sitting there staring at it for a minute. Well, then it moved its arm. Its arm was down on its side, so it, just looked like a black tree because it was about 100 yards away. And once it did that, I realized, okay, well, now it's not a tree. And my mind's racing, what could it be? What could it be? And then it leaned over, and I seen the top of its head, and that's when I knew what I was looking at. And honestly, I didn't really believe in them. I was about 50% realistically if I believed in them. And after that, I mean, I know what I saw that day. I got it on video, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you can see in the video, like, you can make out the outline of it, but you can see in the video how green everything is, but how black that is.
I'd like to see that sometime.
I can send it to you, but I honestly believe I was the smallest one out of my group. All my buddies are all 6'3", 6'4", and so I was the smallest one. And I really believe it was keeping my attention so the other ones could come up behind me.
Absolutely.
Because it would just move enough when, I'd start looking around again, and that's when it would move. It moved 2-3 times, just enough to keep my attention. I sat there and stared at it for probably a good 4 or 5 minutes, and then my buddies all came up, and we got out of there real quick.
Did you ever hear anything else moving in the opposite direction from where you saw this thing?
No, and then that was the thing. I never heard anything, and when they pulled up, because I'm still in my mind, I'm going, did I really see what I saw?
Mm-hmm.
I really, and I know that thing moved, and so I went, peeked around again around the corner, and I noticed it moved up the hill, and that's when I knew. It's like, okay, well, now I'm 100% sure that's what that thing is. And there's no bears at the time. They're in hibernation, and like I said, we were 40 miles into the backcountry, really remote, and the normal snow depth back there was 8 feet to 10.
Wow, very interesting.
And then this year, I actually ended up seeing another one. We were outside of Helena. There's a place called Kaiser Gardens, and it goes up into the Elkhorns on the Great Divide. And we stopped to have a smoke break real quick and grab a drink and something to eat. Well, I got looking around, and we're in a real steep valley, so either side's just pure rock because it's really steep. And it was about 200 to 300 yards away, and it was just standing in clear as day, just sitting there at the edge of the rock, staring at me. And it was so unbelievably big. The shoulders had to be, 5 feet, 4 feet across. I could see the pec muscles of this thing. It was a good
how far did you
200.
I'm sorry.
I was a good 250 yards away.
Mm-hmm.
And, I could clearly see the pec muscles and the arms and stuff. And I waved my buddy over. I said, come here and look at this. Does it not look like there's a big gorilla sitting over there? And he's like, yeah, it does. And so then we both figured out, okay, wait, this thing's we're not just staring at rocks.
Right.
What color was it? Was this one?
This one was kind of a charcoal. It was kind of gray and black. But the one that I seen up in Georgetown, it was just midnight black. I've never seen anything that black before. It was just as black could be, midnight black.
Wow. Well, go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. And after those two experiences, I can't go out in the woods alone anymore. It really messed with me mentally.
Well, you're in good company with a lot of people out there.
Yeah, and I have a couple buddies too, because we like to explore abandoned mines. There's a lot of mines around here. The Great Divide's pretty much like Swiss cheese with mines. And so we go up and explore those a lot, and I have 2-3 buddies that have gotten rocks thrown at them and chased out, and when they're up there camping. My one buddy 2 years ago was up camping, and they had him walking around the cars and whistling back and forth and throwing rocks at the cars, and they ended up leaving. And my one buddy was a sheriff, and he was with them too, and he won't admit what he really thinks it was. He's like, well, I don't know, I can't say. And it's like, come on, you know what it was. No moose or bears are going to be throwing rocks, and you can hear. And he said you could clearly hear him walking around on 2 legs.
Oh wow!
And he said there was at least 3 to 4 of them. And there was 5-6 people with them, and they all left. They all got scared and took out of there.
Do you have anything, Brian? Or
I was going to just ask, what time of day was this, the second one?
It was right around 2 o'clock.
So in the afternoon, then.
Yep. And when the one up in Georgetown Lake was right around in the afternoon, too.
Okay.
It was probably right around 1 o'clock or so. But both sightings were in the middle of winter, and that's the thing. There's bears in both areas, but bears are in hibernation, and bears just don't stand on 2 legs.
Not too often, anyway.
Yeah.
And since it was the day, that's you couldn't have mistaken it for anything else. because it was clear, right? It was in the middle of the afternoon. So yeah.
Oh yeah, and like I said, the one up in Georgetown, I wasn't a believer. I was about kind of 50% sure they were real, but I was like, I don't know. And then after that, because you're sitting there staring at it, and you're like, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? Because you're always told these things aren't real. And I know for a fact now that they're real as I am.
And you know, your mindset was the majority of people out there who were kind of on the fence, like, well, maybe they do, maybe they don't, until you have something that proves it one way or the other. And when you see one, that's it. That's pretty clear.
Yeah, and I mean, the one up in Georgetown Lake, the arms, when it moved its arm away from its body, I mean, it was so big around it. It was bigger than my thigh muscles, and that was its forearm. I mean, they're just huge, and that's what I can't get over. The second one I seen this year was just how big it was. It just looks almost fake. You know what I mean?
Right. That's the thing I think most people can't wrap their head around, is the sheer size of these things.
Yeah, and it's just, and my buddy, he lives up in the mountains in that area, the second sighting, and he believes in them. And when I waved him over, you could tell he knew what it was, and we got out of there pretty quick. I wasn't waiting around to see what was going to happen.
No, that was probably a good move.
The minute that I saw it, though, it stood perfectly still, you know. And then when I'd look away, it would move just a little bit, and then I'd look back, and it just would not move. But I could tell it knew that I was looking at it, and he was caught. But, I mean, just the sheer size, it had to be 8-9 feet tall, and 4 foot long shoulders. I mean, it was just massive. And I could see that one. It was where my other buddies were sitting, they couldn't see it because of the trees, but I could. And so I don't think it thought at first that I could see it until, you know, I was sat there and staring at it. But I could see all the way down to the legs. I mean, the whole profile of the thing, and it was just so massive.
Well, very interesting. I'm glad you were able to walk in and come on and tell us about that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, like I said, after that Georgetown experience, like, that one really messed with me, because I know that's what it was doing, was keeping my attention. And then, like I said, I was the smallest one out of the group, and my buddies, I lost them for like 5 minutes, and that thing was on top of me. And I know it was keeping my attention so the other ones could come behind me. Yeah. And I wasn't even thinking at the time about that. And I've listened quite a bit at Sasquatch Chronicles and you guys and everything. But after that Georgetown Lake one, I mean, half my time now is devoted to listening to other people's stories, and I mean, just trying to figure out, you know, what these things are.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's totally messed with me. I used to be able to go out in the woods alone, be fine, and if I go camping, I have to be in a trailer. I refuse to camp in a tent anymore.
No, I totally understand that.
And then, I mean, up in Marysville, where we go camping and four-wheeler riding, I mean, I tell anybody who's not a believer, because I've only told my story to a couple people, but I promise I can take anybody up there, and they'll be around there. They stick around there for some reason, and it never fails. Every time we go up there, we either hear whistles or wood knocks. I went up there with my girlfriend. It was about 8 o'clock at night, just to see if they were around or so. The minute I pulled up, shut my truck off, I was looking around. My dad has night vision, and so I was looking around, and I could hear this thing walking up the hill. Thud, 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 thud. And she didn't hear it, but, I mean, I couldn't believe how loud it was. You could almost feel it walking.
Maybe I can get there this summer. I've been planning a trip to visit a friend at the Flathead Reservation, so...
Yeah, if you come up, I mean, I promise you we will have encounters there. It never fails. And I used to snowmobile in that area all the time, and I don't go up there anymore because of that. I just get too freaked out because they're always around. Well,
you and your dad keep in touch with me, and let me see what our plans are for getting there, and I'll definitely come up there and see you guys.
Okay. And like I said, I mean, if anybody's a non-believer, I can take them up into Marysville and make them a believer. it's just unbelievable how they're around, and there's houses around. And so I'd like to ask the neighbors, if they've had any weird experiences with them up there. But
it would be interesting to know.
My buddy who got chased out when they were camping with that group, he was only about 10 miles away as the bird flies. It's about a 20-minute back road drive to the spot. So I don't know if it was the same ones up there, but in that area, he's been chased out twice by them.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what other people are seeing around there.
Yeah, he hasn't seen them, but like I said, I mean, he heard them, and they're walking around their camp and stuff, and they all got real freaked out and got out of there. But the second time, him and his brother were up exploring this abandoned mine, and I can take you up there. And I mean, it's a really steep hill to get up this thing, and it was down at the bottom, chucking rocks, baseball-sized rocks, up this mountain. And I don't care if a professional baseball player, how good he is, he could not throw up a rock up that hill as far as this thing was throwing them.
Fascinating. Well, yeah,
so,
we'll let me work on that. We'll plan on getting there to see you.
Okay, and like I said, I mean, every time I've gone up, I mean, they're there. It never fails. They're always around. And I don't know why it is about that spot. It's just, I really believe there's a lot more of them than people think.
Absolutely, there are.
And, I mean, have you been to Montana before?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so you know how much backcountry there is up
Yeah.
here.
Oh, yeah.
It's like if you don't want to be seen, I mean, I could walk in the backcountry and never be seen again. And like I said, the whole Great Divide is just Swiss cheese with mines, and so I think they live in the mines in the wintertime because they're always 55 degrees.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Well, they up in Marysville where we go camping, they always tend to be in this one spot, and I know there's mine shafts up there, and so I think that's where they stay at in the wintertime. But there's a lot of food source up there. There's a lot of deer, rabbits, a lot of wildlife. But I've gone through spots up there before snowmobiling on the trail and come back, and there's a log thrown in the trail.
That's interesting.
And like I said, I love snowmobiling up in that area, and I don't go up there anymore. I won't go up with a group. I absolutely refuse because it just all it takes is for me not paying attention for a second.
That's true.
Thing could grab me,
and the speed that they move.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I couldn't get over is when I up to Georgetown, because like I said, I was racing in my mind. Am I really seeing what I'm seeing? And so, like I said, I went back around, and this thing moved up the mountain, and the snow's 5-6 feet deep, and this thing got up the mountain in no time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was coming up towards us closer to check us out. But like I said, I got that all on GoPro. I had my GoPro on. You can't really make the outline of it, and the second time I see it, but you can tell how black it is. It just sticks out like a sore thumb.
I'd still like to see it.
I will definitely send it to you.
Okay.
Hey, were its arms longer than humans by proportion?
Oh yeah, and that was the thing because it was standing behind the tree, like half behind this tree, and when it moved its arm, that's when I could see daylight and the outline of the fingers and stuff. And yeah, it looked like they're hanging down by its knees, the hands. But just the sheer size of the arms were just amazing how big they were.
Alrighty. Well, listen, we're running a little out of time on this, but keep in touch with me. I'm going to send you and your dad some stuff, and we'll plan on this summer.
Okay. Real quick, my dad said he does have one question.
Okay,
for you,
absolutely.
So back. But thank you for talking with me.
I really appreciate you talking to us.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, if you guys come up here, I will take you. And I mean, if you have many non-believers, I will make them believers because these things, it's like never fails. They're always there. Always there. But I will hand my phone back to my dad. So
okay.
Thank you, guys.
Great talking to you.
You too.
I had a couple of questions. Sorry, I was so nervous talking to you before.
Oh, no
I
problem.
forgot to ask you my questions. The one I saw up at Marysville, it was like 70 yards away. And my question for you guys was, my friend's like, oh, he stepped out to show himself to you. Do you think it was just kind of a fluke thing, or do you think it was showing itself to me? Because when my son was up there the next day, that's how I could tell, I lazed the distance to see how far it was. It was like 70-some yards. And he said, man, when hiding behind those trees, I could see you perfectly, and you couldn't see me. So this thing stepped out.
Purposely.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you. What do you think the deal was? Do you think it did it on purpose so I could see it? Or
they're not stupid. And certainly, if they're going to show themselves, it's for a reason. It could be diverting your attention from something else. It could be diverting your attention for, like your son described, where there are others maneuvering around while you're focusing your attention on that individual. Or it's trying to divert your attention away from something.
So it did it on purpose then. It wasn't just an accident.
And it could have even been a form of a challenge.
Oh. I didn't think about that. So if I would have, because it happened like within 30 seconds after he did that tree knock.
See, and that's very common among primate species to do a challenge.
So if I would have hollered at it, I might have got it going, huh?
Yeah.
Started banging the.
It might not have been a good encounter.
Yeah, and the one that was standing over top of me. Do you have any idea what that was about? I think it was there for nefarious purposes. That's just my personal
could very well be,
belief,
and you were probably lucky.
Know.
You were probably very lucky in that situation.
That's what I thought, because, if it would have grabbed me or she was my girlfriend then, can you imagine explaining that? It would have ruined our lives,
Absolutely.
If it would have grabbed me or her, it would have been just horrible. So I just had no idea. And, there was, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you're very lucky the two of you didn't vanish.
Yeah, you're probably absolutely right. I guess just when I yelled and threw the blankets up, it spooked it enough to caught its off attention.
Yeah, because especially if it didn't know how many other people were nearby.
Okay. Yeah, there's people that vanish, that's for sure. There was one other time when I was a young teenager, about in the same area. We were up at Stickney Creek, and same thing, branches were breaking around our campsite. We didn't see anything this time. But, when you got your grandparents there and stuff like that, you're a lot braver. And so I started throwing rocks and sticks back in the tree. And about 3 in the morning, it ran through the camp, grabbed our card table, flipped it over, and kept running. And everybody was there for that one. Yeah. So we left the next day.
I think I would have too.
yeah. It's just, that's like when Candace is like, oh, we should stay. Obviously, they're friendly. It's like, no. Yeah, when they show up at 3 in the morning, it's not going to be friendly. I was going to ask you, too, if it ever comes to it, and you do have to, where is the best place to shoot them at?
I'll send you a message on that.
Okay.
I have some inside information on that one, and I know people get mad that I don't say that out in public, but I'm not going to divulge that kind of stuff because I don't want a whole bunch of people out trying to, take pot shots, and it's ill-advised, for people just to go out and try to shoot these things.
Right. Yeah, and I wouldn't do it unless it was
an emergency.
In a self-defense situation. Like I said, I don't want to go to war with these things. And what was funny was Candace, Boo's girlfriend, didn't believe him about his Georgetown Lake thing until she saw it run up the hill that time at Marysville. And then she got the same treatment that she gave him. When she went to work the next day, she was all excited, and telling people, oh, it was a bear. It was this. And that was actually pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nobody believes you until they see it, and then it's not so funny anymore.
It's not funny anymore, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so anyway, those are my stories, and every one of them absolutely true. And no exaggeration, that thing was about 12 inches from my head, man. If I wouldn't have heard that branch snap, I would not have known it was there.
Well, Roy, I'm sure glad we had a chance to talk to you and your son. I mean, that was a real bonus.
Yeah.
I'm really, really glad of that. And I told him, I said, I'm planning a trip to the Flathead Reservation. I'm hoping this summer I set time aside for it. I have a friend there. And you're not horribly far away from that, so...
no, we're about 3.5 hours.
Yeah, so maybe we can actually go up there and take a look at the place he was talking about.
Yeah, and I can bring you, like he said, it always happens that on that where it stepped out at, like when I heard that little kid crying, which I don't know what that was about. I thought, well, it's either a juvenile or they're trying to bait me to go out there to look for it.
Good thinking. It could have been either.
Yeah. And then when I heard the, that's when I left, man. Because I was by myself,
Yeah, that would have been time to go.
Yeah. And like he said, he's been up there, and every time something happens, and it's not that far from our house, and you're more than welcome to stay here as long as you like, and guarantee you if we go up there, something will happen for sure.
Okay. Well, let me get my plans together, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah. I just don't understand these researchers. I'm not a researcher, obviously, that go out and look for these things, I mean, man, you're just playing with fire.
It's because they really don't understand the nature of the creatures.
Yeah. Yeah, they think they're just benevolent forest giants or something like that. Man, I know better. Just like I said, when you're around, you just get that gut-wrenching feeling. And then, well, that's real interesting. I was wondering why it stepped out. So it probably purposely wanted me to see it for either a challenge or it was diverting my attention.
Exactly.
So, okay, well, thank you for answering that for me.
No problem.
Good to talk to somebody with a lot more experience,
And I'll share more information with you, privately between us, so.
Okay. Yeah, well, when you get up here, we'll grab the four-wheelers. I got a four-wheeler and a side-by-side, and we'll go up there, and if you want, we can pull the trailer up there and stay during the day. I don't know if you'd want to stay up there at night, but, I mean, you'll definitely get activity for sure. Like I said, that one, when it was hooting like an owl, it was no more than 30 feet away from me, man, when it was in that little grove of trees. I'll show you exactly where that was.
Okay.
And it was so ridiculous because it was so loud.
Right.
Just like I heard, we were up there, same area, four-wheeling with my buddies about 2 years earlier. That was before we saw the tree breaks and stuff. I heard this scream. The cows started going crazy. There's a bunch of range cows up there. And they were jumping, and this scream came down the valley, and it sounded like a woman, really high scream. And the volume, I was clear up on a hill. It was unbelievable, the volume of it. So.
Oh, I know. I've heard it myself. I can relate.
Yeah. Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate you answering my questions for me.
Well, thank you,
and,
Ray.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you got my number. Feel free to give me a call anytime. And you show up, you got a place to stay, and we'll definitely take you up there. I mean, stuff will happen for sure, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. You got any more questions, or?
Not at the moment, but again, thanks for joining us, and we will chat soon.
Okay. Well, you have a good evening. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you, William. You guys have a good evening.
You too.
Bye.
Well, folks, stay tuned for the second segment of the show. We'll be right back. Well, we're back. Brian, what sort of questions do we have this week?
Well, we have a few from listeners, but I figured we'd start with just some news in the last week or so.
Okay.
First of all, I'm not sure if you saw this, but there's a movie out called Missing Link, it's an animated movie, but Hugh Jackman does the voice of a character who goes off to the Pacific Northwest to prove the existence of Sasquatch. Only they don't call it Sasquatch in the movie; they call it Mr. Link.
Oh.
And I guess it's getting pretty good reviews, so maybe worth checking out. But also, just in the last week or so, there are a few videos on YouTube. There's one from Ohio that just came out, and it's in the pouring rain. It's really hard to see. I wouldn't really put a lot of credence into it, but there's another one from Utah with a black creature walking up a mountain, and it looks legit, but once again, it's from a long distance away, and you never know, like, the people who are shooting it. So, but it might be worth checking out for those listening if you go on YouTube and just type in recent Sasquatch videos. But anyways, though, we have a question from Arlene, and she wanted to ask, I know that we were talking about this a little bit off the air, but she wanted to ask about DNA and Melba Ketchum and her lab, which I know that David Paulides substantiates his claims of them being part human. And what's your take on the whole Melba Ketchum lab?
Oh, boy. You know, I looked her up a number of years ago when her name first started coming out with all this stuff. And initially, I contacted her and offered her my assistance, and I believe that she was interested in some assistance. And then, some people contacted me and pointed me in some different directions to look into her work. And what I did was things like looking at her business at the Better Business Bureau, which had an F rating.
Yeah, I saw.
And I looked into this. It just kind of snowballed into really bizarre. She was claiming that she had habituated a group of Sasquatches and that they both mentally and physically raped her. I don't even want to go into the whole DNA stuff because, we talked about that once another time about there were collection issues, and we talked to somebody recently who had done a little bit more in-depth study on that, and I can't remember who we talked to. But he also had looked into how these supposed hair samples were collected, and it was just a mess. Tons and tons of contamination issues, and first of all, number one, how do you know where the hair sample came from?
Yeah,
you have to take it directly off a sample to know, and there has to be a chain of custody, and you can't just go out and find hair laying around in the woods someplace and take it to a lab and they pop up Bigfoot. It just doesn't work that way. For my first book, Notes in the Field, I actually interviewed a DNA expert in Canada, and he quite clearly stated that you have to have something in the database to compare these unknowns to. So for him to come up with, and I don't know where, Paulides or whoever comes up with this stuff that they're part human, how do you know that? It's impossible to know that.
Yeah. When Arlene asked this question, I did a little research too on Melba Ketchum, and I saw that same thing that you just pointed out about the BBB giving them an F rating. And there's just a lot of there's another article that we found that just a lot of red flags about her in particular and how she has financial ties to some of these organizations and just a lot of information that you can't really take to be accurate, I would say. So
yeah, in terms of, do I put any stock in any of the work that she quote unquote has done? I'd say personally, I say no.
Right. Okay, Todd has a couple of questions. He asks, he points out that animals seem to have knowledge about natural remedies for health issues. For example, cats and dogs, they eat grass supposedly for digestive issues, and how deer sometimes will go and roll in ash after a forest fire to supposedly get rid of fleas and ticks. And he just asks if you think that Sasquatch has some of those same knowledge sets to where they might be able to provide, self remedies for some of these health issues.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Most creatures have instincts. Native Americans, or most recent natural humans, outside of societies, who had great knowledge about, herbal medicines and things like that. So, oh yeah, I'm sure it's something that's instinctual.
Mm-hmm. Now his next question is kind of a speculation question, sort of a hypothetical question, but he asks, okay, if one clan of Sasquatch came across an individual from another group that they had never seen before, would they attack it, do you think? So first of all, that's the first question. Would they attack it, or would they just ignore each other?
Oh boy, that's a question that's up in the air. There's no way of knowing. It could be either or any other, possible scenario. It's really hard to tell.
Yeah, and then he asked, would there be any retaliation from the other group? Again, I guess that would be impossible to know, really.
If it was a lone individual, of course, there wouldn't be any retaliation from another group because it wouldn't belong to another group per se. Now, if it did, yeah, there could be issues. We see that with chimps.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's we're tossing around hypotheticals. It's really hard telling.
Yeah. Now, this last question is a little bit hypothetical, but I guess you could maybe look to other primates to get the answer to this. But he asks, okay, what would a battle between two groups be like? Would it be just the alphas participating, or would it be the whole group?
I think, well, you're right. I think we'd have to look at other primates to see what happens there. And I think with chimps is a good example because we have videos of them actually warring with one another, and I think it is the entire group. Mostly the males, but I think occasionally the females will join in also.
Okay, interesting.
And with chimps, they will attack young of the other group.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, I was going to ask you about this. Did you ever hear, this was in the 1990s, 1992 specifically, but there was a Dutch model. She was actually a Playboy playmate, but she did other things as well. But her name was Anna Marie Goddard, and she supposedly, this is in California, they were doing a shoot, apparently, and on the last day, they were kind of having a party or whatever, and they noticed a creature, and they actually have this on video. The video is really not that good, but I was just wondering if you had heard that story before.
Were they the people up in the redwoods, and they were in a motorhome?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. I'm not real impressed with it.
Yeah, I was going to say I saw it too because I think it was on. She was on like the Tonight Show or whatever, and they showed part of it, and it didn't really look convincing at all. But she says that she took it to some experts, and they said it was possibly legit. But
of course, it makes you wonder now. What experts would you take it to? You could have video analyzed, and now here's the gist of that. It's like with court cases, you could have, let's say, pictures analyzed. Mm-hmm. And now the picture might be legitimate 100%. Now, what was actually going on, is a different matter. You could have an entirely hoax situation going on, and the picture's legitimate, but that's two different things. You're talking technical things like with film versus what was going on in the context.
Yeah.
See, so you can split hairs in that case.
Yeah, and actually, you're right. I'm looking it up right now. It was the Redwoods video that we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, not a very, very convincing video. Hey, but I was going to ask you. Now, I recently signed up with Amazon Unlimited. That's where you get like all kinds of books for. It's like $10 a month, but you get access to all kinds of books. And I was just looking at a lot of the ones, and most of the ones on Sasquatch are just about encounters, which are still, pretty good, I'm sure, but not a whole lot about the characteristics, the anthropology, and stuff like that. But anyways, though, there was one that looked at the Patterson film, and they talk about the history of the area, and then they flash forward to the 1967 video and the 3 weeks that led up to it and everything. Mm-hmm. But they start out talking about the history in 1958 in Bluff Creek. And I was just curious because it turns out that the tracks originally found, and this isn't to discredit the Patterson film later on, years later, but the original tracks by Ray Wallace apparently turned out to be fake. Is that correct?
Well, here's the thing with Ray Wallace. Now, for those who listened to last week's show, we did the Jerry Crew story in the third segment. And there was actually quite a bit of historical information about what went on in that area in that story. And I know, of course, from knowing the original people dealing with all this stuff who knew Ray Wallace. Ray Wallace, as it was told to me, directly from people who knew him, was an ardent supporter. And in the Jerry Crew story, it talks about that Ivan Sanderson wrote, talked about, how Wallace was very, very fascinated with the subject, was, really into this. And I know when people like John Green and Bob Titmus, those guys came in, they sort of displaced him as sort of being good because he was the contractor that ran those crews in that area. So I think he probably felt that, some position of authority there. And then these guys came in and sort of pushed him out. Then he decided he was the person who hoaxed all the tracks. But when you look at the 6 different Sasquatches that were identified by their footprints over that decade in the area, not one of those feet matches Wallace's wooden feet. So, it kind of discredits his claim that he was hoaxing all those footprints.
Yeah, I mean, what did Renee think of him? After those, the prints first came out, and over the decades, what did he think of Wallace?
Well, I won't use the exact words because they're kind of dirty, but he just wave his hand and when Renee was disgusted with something, that's what he'd do, and he'd go, yeah, so and so is full of horse, whatever, and that's pretty much what he said about Wallace.
Yeah.
He'd say, I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but
yeah. Exactly.
But no, and I'll tell you what, there are pictures, and I can't remember if it's in Green's first or second book, that Renee said, and he told Green, he says, those are fake tracks. But Green posted them anyway, as though they were legitimate, and Renee told me which ones were fake and why they were fake. So there had been some marginal hoaxing there, but they were well aware of what it was and what was going on. But that's not to take away from the many thousands of legitimate footprints that were found there.
Mm-hmm. Now, actually, speaking of Renee and Green, just out of curiosity, I mean, you would know from talking to them, but why were they so invested in the subject, given the fact that they themselves never actually had an encounter? What drew them in initially, and what kept them involved in the hunt for Sasquatch all those years?
Well, DeHinden, I have mentioned before, he had an interest when he heard the story about the Himalayas, the British mountaineers going to take a look for the Yeti, and then he decided he was going to go to British Columbia and see if there was anything to it. And apparently he dug up just enough information that convinced him there was something worth looking into. As he interviewed people, he came to the realization that there was really something to this. When he and Green connected, Green, came to the same realization that there really was something to this. It wasn't just, made up stories. The more in depth they got into this, it compelled them to stick with it.
Mm-hmm. Now, also another name that comes across a lot in these books is Tom Slick. And so what can you tell us about Tom Slick? Because it says that he funded Renee and Green, and then later on he died in a plane crash, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, he was a millionaire in Texas. Rumor has it he had connections with the CIA. I don't know for sure if he did or not, but that's the stories. he put together the Northwest Expedition, and it consisted of people like John Green and Renee Dehenan and Bob Titmus and a few others. The story has it that he didn't get the results that he wanted quick enough, so he fired those guys and brought in Peter Byrne, and then nothing happened. The project sort of went away, and he died in a plane crash.
Mm-hmm. In the hunt for Sasquatch, obviously there are a lot of people that go out there, like the people in finding Bigfoot or not finding Bigfoot, and obviously they're going on and doing searches by land. But it seems to me that if somebody was really serious, if a group is really serious, they might want to maybe do more searches through the air, like through a helicopter or plane, probably helicopter. But I'm just curious, have there ever been any sightings from the sky, from a plane, or from a helicopter? And why don't they do that more often?
There have been a few, but first of all, it's expensive. That's part of the big part of it. It costs a lot, especially with a helicopter. For the pilot time, the aircraft fuel, things like that, and then it's going to be hit and miss at best.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really. I don't know. I mean, for somebody to just go out and kind of do the shotgun approach, it's not very practical. Right.
Yeah. There's another name that came up. What do you know, or what do you think of, first of all, I don't know if you've heard of him, but a guy named John Bindernagel. Have you heard of him before?
Yeah, Bindernagel was an anthropologist. A lot of people, give him lots of points these days, but I do remember, Green and Hinden equally, and I believe Grover Krantz too, they really didn't care for him too much. He had some kind of crazy ideas back, in the 70s, but and they wrote him off. And those guys, not just Green and Hinden, but Krantz and people like that who were anthropologists, they could be quick to write people off if they had squirrely ideas. So, I mean, they were trying to legitimize the subject. And I don't know a great deal about Bindernagel. I don't remember a lot of the stuff. There were people, I have so much going on, if I don't have a reason to focus on people, and if it's, somebody like that didn't really bring a lot to the table, then I just don't focus on them. I mean, I don't have time to do that.
Right. Okay, so I have a few questions from this article written by Wolf Fahrenbach. I'm not sure if you ever heard of him, but anyways, some of these questions.
Henner Fahrenbach?
Well, this one says it's from Wolf. That's his name, Wolf.
Is he a PhD?
He might be, yeah. Yeah, this is from an academic article, I think.
Oh, boy.
I forget which one offhand, but anyways, though, now some of these questions are kind of speculative. Some of it's based on truth, though. This article points out that Sasquatches, after killing a deer, will oftentimes bury the carcass under a pile of branches. And I guess my question is, have you heard of that before? Is that common? And then secondly, what is the point of why they would do that?
Well, he's wrong. They eat them. If they're going to kill something, they're not just going to leave it around under brush. And I'll tell you what, that guy was the one I mentioned from, if it's the same person, was the same guy who came into the Yakult investigation and basically ruined it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I talked about him before. I don't really have any good thoughts for that person.
Okay. Well, maybe, yeah, this may have just used his first name as his nickname, perhaps. I don't know. But
that guy came into that place against the family's wishes, was there about 30 minutes, and thinks he's the expert on Yakult.
Oh, okay, that's the guy then.
That's the guy. If I'm pretty sure that's the same person.
Okay. Now, again, this could be just completely inaccurate, but that article by him also states or speculates that just like a lot of other animals, Sasquatch perhaps gains weight in the fall and loses weight in the winter, maybe because the food supply is a little maybe better, more available in the fall, and maybe not so much in the winter. Have you heard of that before? Or
it's possible. I mean, bears do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say because bears do it. So
I mean, there is less food available during the winter, but I don't know the value of that in particular. I mean, that's kind of with a lot of animals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now the last thing from this article that really surprised me because I've never heard of this, but there supposedly have been sightings of Sasquatches holding hands just like humans would.
Oh, good Lord.
Well, that's what the article says.
Oh boy, this guy. I don't think I'm not even gonna go down that road.
And giving each other flowers and no, just kidding. Okay, so moving on a bit. Now here's kind of a question that I had. Obviously, common sense would state that Sasquatches would have to obviously be by a good food supply, of course. I mean, that's a given. Mm-hmm. But also, though, in terms of water, it turns out that gorillas don't actually drink a lot of water because they supposedly get a lot of their hydration from the vegetables that they eat and the leaves that they eat and so forth. Is it conceivable that even though everybody assumes that Sasquatches have to be around big water supplies, that's not necessarily 100% true all the time?
That's correct.
Because because they could maybe get hydration from leaves and other vegetation and so forth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Because I was surprised to hear that, too, about gorillas. It turns out that they don't drink a lot of water when they're observed in the wild. So
Right, and the Sasquatch, even though they are around water sources frequently, doesn't mean they have to be near one for water.
Right. It's interesting, too, because marine mammals, for instance, a lot of people don't know this, but they don't actually drink water, even though they're in the sea. I mean, obviously they can't because it's salt water, so they actually get their hydration
through the skin.
Yeah, exactly. Here's something that I noticed on the YouTube comments from last week that came up, that there was an observation of a white Sasquatch, and it seems like I've been hearing a lot about that lately, about white Sasquatches. First of all, how common are white Sasquatches? And then a follow-up to that would be, are they white just because of, age? Like humans have white hair when they get older, or is it just perhaps that they're born that way and they stay that way?
Well, they do exist. The one that I saw the second time was either, I don't know, it wasn't really fully white. It was gray. Could be age. Could be something similar to a silverback gorilla too. Nobody knows. But so there are gray and white ones. They're the fewest coloration reported of all the type colors.
Okay, another thing that comes up sometimes in these articles is that with mountain gorillas, scientists have noticed that there are at least 25 distinct vocalizations, and I guess each vocalization means something, some emotion or some thought, whatever. Mm-hmm. And how soon will it be before people like you and other people looking at Sasquatch are able to identify and characterize specific Sasquatch vocalizations and the potential meaning for? Or I mean, has that already been done?
No, that's gonna be a long time, because you're talking about having to have long-term, sustained observations and recording, like they do with gorillas and chimps and other primates. At this point, we're nowhere near doing that. And I know there's people who say, "Oh, I've done this." That's baloney. You have to have. We're talking long-term, close contact observation over an extended time period to be able to document that kind of information.
Yeah, and then another problem that researchers would run into is that there are different types and perhaps maybe a certain type doesn't vocalize nearly as much as another type, and so forth.
Yeah, there's lots of variables that would come into play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're a long ways from doing a lot of that sort of, having that sort of knowledge.
Yeah, I would agree. And then, okay, obviously you brought this up too, talking to our last witnesses about how they're smart. I mean, they can be very vindictive and very nasty, but they are very smart.
Exactly.
At least, and so in terms of memory and brain size, because I know that you've talked in the past about how they'll stay in an area and then they'll move within, I think you said, a 500-mile radius, and then sometimes they'll come back the very next year. Is that kind of random, or do they actually remember the exact locations that they come to each year, and do they remember certain, I don't know, landmarks and?
Well, they know their ranges, so I'm sure it's memory. So
you think that they come back to the same places deliberately?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just because I know that with other animals, it's the same thing. They'll remember, you take them away from a place for a year, and then you bring them back, and they'll remember certain things, so.
Any animal is territorial knows its range, and they're intimately knowledgeable about everything in that range.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now here's a question that I have, and it's going to seem bizarre, but bear with me for a second. Obviously, there are plenty of stories of people going out camping or hiking, and obviously they have experiences, they have encounters that are not friendly. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, though, when people go out into the woods and they, set up a tent, for instance, and they camp out for the night, okay, that's one thing to be on their territory. That in itself is enough to really, piss them off and make them angry. But I would think on top of that, the fact that people, obviously when you have a tent, you don't have a bathroom. So people go out and they urinate in the woods, or they have dogs that urinate in the woods. Sure. Is that almost like an insult? Do they really view that as an insult? Almost like not only are people on their lands, but now they're marking their territory literally.
And that's exactly it. It's a sign of territorial marking. So it's like, if they were to witness that, here's this other primate that they probably don't like too much, claiming their territory.
Right. Okay. That's what I figured, but I know it's kind of a weird question, but it makes sense though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And this was actually a question from a listener from a couple weeks ago, but I forgot to ask it before. But is it conceivable that a pack of coyotes could actually kill one or perhaps even more of these things? Imagine a huge pack of coyotes. Would it almost, because we talk about the Sasquatch being an apex predator, but in a way, if a gang of you call them coyotes, or I call them coyotes, whatever, but could a gang of those kill one of these things?
I doubt it.
No?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Because
you have power, speed, and intelligence on the side of the Sasquatch.
Okay.
And the Sasquatch isn't typically going to be alone. They're going to be within earshot of other members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true, I guess.
So, if there was any problem, and they can climb and things like that, so...
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, hey, on that note, too, how many reports do you get of them being in trees and climbing?
Years ago it wasn't a lot, but, people weren't seeing things like that or weren't looking. Those kind of reports are on the rise. I don't have exact numbers, at my disposal at the moment, but more and more. Not huge numbers, but, occasionally somebody will talk about seeing one in a tree.
Yeah. You actually answered one of my questions earlier when you were talking to one of the witnesses, when you were talking to Steve, I think, about the number of juveniles is increasing. I was just about to ask that, because that is a sign that the population is increasing when you have more young ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a good sign of a strong, robust breeding population.
In particular, how much is the increase in recent years of those types of sightings compared to previous years?
We don't really know. It's kind of dramatic all of a sudden because we're getting a lot of reports of people seeing young ones, where in past years, not so much.
Right, right. In particular, is there a geographic area that you get more reports of juveniles compared to another?
It seems to be across the board. And here's something that's interesting that Steve mentioned, the way that what he perceived as a juvenile, and probably was due to the size and everything and his estimated weight. Of course, he didn't see all of it, so it could, like he said, it could have been heavier. If the young ones are moving in a low posture like that, where they're difficult to see, it could be a defensive mechanism for young ones to move like that. Where they're low to the ground, moving quickly from one point to the other. Lots of animals, young, will have different behaviors or markings or things like that than the adults will, just because they're a little more vulnerable, obviously, than the adults. So it kind of made me think, and I was talking to him about that, before we went on the air, and I think it's very possible that the way that one was moving could be a kind of a signature behavior for juvenile Sasquatches. We don't know, but I'm speculating, of course.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, going back to your career as an author, before you started writing your books a few years ago, did you always know that you wanted to eventually write about your stories and in the interviews that you've done, or is that just something that just came about kind of spontaneously?
I didn't really think about it. I mean, I remember reading Green's books and thinking as a teenager, wouldn't it be cool to be an author someday? But it wasn't something that stuck in my mind. It wasn't something I thought about. It was sort of a fleeting thought once or twice, and that was about the extent of it. And it wasn't until after Renee DeHinden passed away that a good friend of mine started really pestering me about it, and I sort of grudgingly, started doing it.
Yeah. Now, did Renee or Green ever encourage you to write, or did you really keep in contact a lot with them after? Because I know that Green died recently, right? Just a couple of years ago.
Right,
but,
right.
Did you keep in contact with Renee and Green all the way till they passed away, or?
Renee, I did. Green, not so much. Green and I were never really that close of friends. I could always contact him, and of course, we'd chat and stuff, but I wasn't very impressed with Green. I was more interested in getting to the nuts and bolts of the subject. Green was more about presenting the subject. DeHinden was more about the nuts and bolts. So I gravitated more to him than Green.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Well, obviously we know about the vindictive accounts, but have there ever been any accounts, and I'm not talking about some of the fake encounters out there that you'll hear from the BFRO and stuff like that, but have you ever had a witness that actually had a fairly peaceful encounter with any of these creatures, or are they all pretty much bad?
Well, there are, I guess, what you'd term benign encounters, or and we could talk about Roy's son when he saw the individual just sort of standing there, and I guess that could be considered a benign encounter. But you have to look at the larger context. What was really going on? Why was it just kind of there? Even my own second encounter, you could consider that a benign encounter because it was across the river, which wasn't that wide. It was at the edge of the water. When my car came into view, it took off into the brush. Without knowing the larger context of what's going on, I think in that case it probably didn't hear the car, saw us, and then took off. I think those kind of things do happen periodically, but if one is sort of there and there's no aggressive behavior, there's got to be more going on. Not to say that it's just being aggressive for the sake of being aggressive, but its behavior is always telling. There's a larger picture of what's going on than just oh, it didn't care that the person was there. I don't think that's true. I think there's something else happening.
Yeah, when Roy's son was telling that story, it did remind me of the movie Jurassic Park, where towards the end there's that character Muldoon, and he's hunting the raptor, and he thinks that, just like Roy's son said about the Sasquatch, like it's keeping his attention, but then he doesn't realize that there's one that comes up from behind him.
Exactly.
That's exactly what Roy's son's encounter reminded me of when he was telling that story.
And it's like, there's the video that I shared on our Facebook page some time ago about the group of chimps hunting a smaller monkey. And their behavior in that, and it's from the air, you can see these chimps moving in this pattern. That each member has its own specific job in that group to hunt this monkey, and they get the monkey. We hear from many witnesses very similar kinds of things, where they know they're being flanked, but they're quiet. I mean, occasionally they hear a noise, but so they know that there's something on either side of them, and then the louder one driving them from the rear. And of course, they don't know what's ahead, so that's that intelligence. And there's more going on in the situation. It goes back to the context, and these not so nice behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if I answered that. I sort of got off on a tangent there.
No, you did. And how much time do we have, or how many more questions do you want to answer?
Let's go for a couple more, then we should probably wrap it up.
Okay. Okay. So one of the books that I found too on this Amazon Unlimited talks about how this witness, they did have some encounters, and I do believe the author. I don't think that they're lying or anything, but they claim that when they were having their encounters, their family, it was attacking their house. It was throwing rocks at their house and stuff like that. And one day they went and just did a little bit of exploring during the day as a family, like they were not alone. They went together and they had guns and everything. And they claimed that they found a nest of one of these things. It was in a torn down house, and the nest was like, they said it was about a foot deep, and it was constructed with grass. And they surmised that was probably the sleeping area. Have you come across that from witnesses before, like a nest like that?
No.
No.
And in fact, I'm not going to elaborate on their sleeping right now. It's something I'm working on with Mr. Black, but it's an entirely different situation than something like that. So sorry, folks, for not elaborating, because I don't have all the information yet. So stay tuned on that one. That's something down the road I'll cover.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so probably just the last question here. This is surprising to me, but this is from another one of these books, and they claim to have talked to Green and emailed Green, and Green stated that only 253 out of the 3,684 sightings that he had logged, at least at that point, which is only 7%, involved more than one Sasquatch. That's not to say that there weren't others around, but it's just that the sighting was only of one.
Right, and I think originally that's what we thought, that they were solitary. But as I looked into it more, I started to realize, from talking to people and looking at the context. See, that was the thing that Green never did. They never looked at the context of what was the larger picture of what was going on. And when you talk to more people in the area than just the one witness, pretty soon the story unfolded where there were multiple individuals, almost always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, we have some other questions here, but we can save those for next time. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, it's been very interesting. We were lucky to have 3 witnesses this evening. That was unexpected, folks. We knew that Steve was going to come on. Steve wanted to do an update because he had that sighting, and then Roy had emailed me, and I was supposed to talk to him, and I didn't get a chance to prior to him coming on. So he was very gracious to come on without us having a conversation prior. And then he mentioned talking to his son, and then here his son walks into the house and he hands him the phone. So that was a real treat. So, and great questions as always, Brian. Mm-hmm. And folks, be sure to stay tuned for the third segment, the reading by Jim Sower. And Brian, we'll pick this up again next week.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, my friend. And folks, stay tuned. Brian, have a good night, buddy.
Okay, you too.
Welcome. This encounter is being brought to you by William Jevning and is being narrated by Jim Sower. This is from Jackson County, Prospect, Oregon, Union Creek, 2001. Back in the winter of 2001, my youngest son and I were on our way from Boise, Idaho, to Medford, Oregon. We had taken a car trailer to his old place in Boise in order to haul his non-running Jeep to his new place in Medford. We hit an area of heavy snow in the southern Cascades around 2 o'clock a.m. It took 45 minutes or so to get down the mountain. We had, of course, been drinking coffee to stay alert. About 25 miles west of the pass, it became obvious that the last few quarts of coffee had to be drained. We stopped at a wide spot in the road near a summer tourist haunt, deserted in winter. There is a gas station and ice cream joint on the west side of the road, closed this time of year, and no town or settlement within 30 miles. This is tall timber country and unsettled. Across the road is a small parking area for the ice cream joint. It is paved and about 200 feet wide and 80 feet deep. I pulled in, and as I stepped out with my .45 on my hip, it occurred to me in a flash that grabbing the .590 Mossy would also be good. As we walked to the far end of the area, to be well off the road, the hair on the back of my neck and my arms stood on end. The area directly to our front was open with a depth of 50 yards and a width of 100 yards. The night was clear and cold, 8 to 10 inches of snow on the ground, and with the moon almost full, so we could see quite well. While standing and taking a leak with my son about 15 feet to my right, I saw, as if springing from the earth in front of us across the open area, 10 or 12 creatures moving rapidly back and forth in sort of a thatch weave pattern. These things, not human men, were close to 7 feet tall, thin, bipedal with long arms, medium-length gray fur, and damned fast on their feet. I brought the shotgun up and slid the safety off, as my son was drawing his .45. I don't know if I can adequately explain the overwhelming feeling of menace, but here goes. I had been operating on pure instinct since I had stepped from the pickup. The rotten feeling hit me a split second before the things arrived. The feeling, instinct, was that we were prey and subject to a very bad death, and to be slaughtered and eaten. Not a logical process, but gut feeling and massively overwhelming. As they were moving around in front of us, more appeared and mixed among them, all the while running about fast in front of us. My son and I were backing toward the truck now. I would not present my back to them, and some of them peeled right and left in an encirclement movement. They were rolling in fast from the sides now, and I could smell and feel their presence. We got to the truck, loaded on adrenaline and ready to kill. As we both knew we were in grave danger, we piled into the truck, locked the doors. I had the keys out and ready as my butt neared the seat. I had the engine lit and transmission in gear and gas pedal mashed in one motion. Adrenaline is great stuff. As we fled, yes, fled, something very close by let out an undulating scream of rage and pain. I believe one or more of the group had gotten really close to us in their pursuit, and I had run over the foot of one of them. Yeah, they were that close. We rolled onto the highway, and I told my son to watch the bed of the pickup, as well as the trailer. He already was indexed to the rear with a shotgun. We hauled ass for at least 20 miles before the feeling of grave danger started to abate. The feeling that nailed both of us, as we discussed soon afterward, was one of being prey and soon to be slaughtered and eaten. I am not easily led, and neither believe or disbelieve all the Bigfoot, ghost, and werewolf stuff. In fact, I am skeptical. My son was speaking with a co-worker about 6 months later who had grown up in Prospect, Oregon, about 30 miles south of Union Creek where the incident took place. He asked Jake if he had ever heard any strange goings-ons up in their area. Jake went ashy white and pretty much retold the above tale. He says to avoid the place at night. A family friend, a 25-year retired cop, not given to flights of fancy, and an excellent observer, had a tale very similar from a year before. I told my wife of this event, and of course, she looked at me at the beginning as though I had developed a third eyeball in the center of my forehead. That was from shock. She did believe me, but did not wish to hear any details. She said the tale gave her chills. Me too. As I write this, the hair on the back of my neck and forearms is sticking up. I have not gone back to explore, and would not, without a large group of shotgun and flamethrower-equipped men with me. My son and I are both sane, sober persons, and not taken to hysteria. We were wide, very wide awake as things transpired. We saw and smelled what was there. As a sidebar, neither of us heard footfalls from the creatures. They were silent until I heard one as we were getting the hell out of there. To my knowledge, and I have researched, there is nothing that matches these creatures unless one considers old legends and folk tales of weird creatures. To conclude, I have to fall back on Elmer Keith's famous line, "Hell, I was there." This concludes the reading of the encounter. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.